On May 26, 2003, the 143-card set Scourge was released. When that happened, Magic the Gathering experienced two endings. The end of the Onslaught block and everything with it, including Kamal's 6-set story arc, as well as the end of Magic the Gathering cards as players knew them, as it's the final set in the game's almost 10 years history with what's now referred to as the old card frames, as the cards in every set thereafter would look strikingly different, with the rare exception of course. The set story concludes that of the vicious war between the Angel Karona and the powerful new leader of the Cabal, Phage, after their simultaneous deaths in battle by the druid Kamal, forged a new threat, the powerful avatar and self-proclaimed god, Karona. You can read all about it in J. Robert King's novel, Scourge. Failing that, here's a story summary.
Let's start with the Scourge.
The battle at Sanctum halts as a new being, an avatar of pure magical essence called Karona, gets the attention of everyone in the fray. Her appeal and allure enormous, all fighting stops, and seemingly everyone on the battlefield begins to worship her as a god. Overwhelmed by the immediate attention, she flees the scene and ventures out into the Otarian desert. She is immediately followed by many of those from the battlefield, the druid Kamal included. Stonebrow, Sanctum's former protector, is trapped under some rubble and is unable to join. Karona's influence now gone, the giant centaur realizes just how much of a danger this newcomer is and enlists the city guard to defend the city in case of her return. Kamal is the first to catch up to Karona. He finds her confused as to who she is and what her purpose is. Shortly thereafter, the rest of the crowd arrives, trampling one another in a mad attempt to be close to their new god. Again, Karona flees. Kamal, sensing now that the avatar could prove to be incredibly dangerous, departs for Krosa to retrieve the only weapon he feels can defeat her, the Mirari sword. Karona, now traveling near the illusionary city of Topos, happens upon two strangers in dire need of assistance, Sash and Waistcoat. As it turns out, the two are unmen who escaped from Akroma's wrath after she had provided them with corporeal form before attempting to kill them for their desertion. Karona, noting that the two strangers are acting rational towards her rather than rabid like the throngs of Otarians who are so desperate to worship her, takes a liking to the duo. She cares for them and names them her prophets, asking them to communicate with her fanatical worshippers on her behalf. Her two prophets then suggest they travel to the mage city of Erosia. Meanwhile, in the Krosan forest, the rampant growth around the Mirari had become cancerous. A giant growth of brambles and trees has grown around the site under which Kamal ventures to reclaim his sword. In the vast underbrush, the ghost of his fallen mentor, Balthor, guides him past the area's various perils and to the corpse of the former Mer ambassador, Loquatus, the merman's long-dead body still pinned to the Krosan ground, impaled by the Mirari sword. Like the forest surrounding the Mirari, Loquatus' corpse has also grown considerably in size. It attacks Kamal just as soon as the druid removes the sword from its resting place. The druid is able to destroy zombie Loquatus, but the corrupting allure of the Mirari begins to infect his mind once again. Elsewhere, Karona and her prophets, Sash and Waistcoat, reach Erosia. Despite the city populated by wise wizards and other such mages, the result is the same. They bow down before her and display worship so extreme that it endangers the lives of everyone around them. Sash and Waistcoat enjoy a life of luxury in the city due to their status as her prophets, and Karona explores her new world, unaware that Otarians all over the continent are converging on Erosia so that they too may worship her. This includes not just the barbarian tribes of the Pardic Mountains and what's left of the Order, but the Cabal as well, as Kubur sends a contingent, led by the slightly mad Kabbalist Braids, to capture her. Once she returns to the city, she finds army upon army whipped into a fanatical devotion for her. Almost as if commanded to, the assembled Otarians began murderously rampaging to be near her. Karona grabs her two prophets and looks yet again to flee. At the suggestion of Sash and Waistcoat, however, the godlike avatar uses her powers to create a vast chasm beneath the armies. It swallows everyone and everything within it, Braids included, before being filled back in again, burying everyone alive. Karona's prophets are terrified. Back in the Krosan forest, Kamal seems to be having some trouble with the Mirari, falling victim to the artifact's seductions. Aided by Balthor's ghost, he tries to manage, but finds himself attacking his mentor's spirit instead, slashing the sword through it and dissipating the ghost entirely. The shock of having killed his old friend a second time snaps the druid back into reality and provides him with the sanity he needs to finally control the weapon that had for so long controlled him. He then departs for Topos. There, he locates the death worm that had consumed the illusionist Ixidor. The druid allows himself to be swallowed by the beast and finds the man, still living inside of it and weeping over the lost soul of his dear slain love, Nevia. In order to bring Ixidor back to reality, Kamal destroys the worm from the inside out and departs with a protesting Ixidor in tow. The illusionist decides to clean himself up with a quick bath in a river near Topos. He emerges from the water not as Ixidor, however, but rather as Llewellyn, the third Newman who had yet been all but missing in the story up to this point and had been lending his powers to the mortal Ixidor all this time. Much more agreeable now than just a few minutes before, he departs, along with Kamal, to locate his brothers, Kubur and Averu, so that they may together face the goddess Karona. And speaking of Karona, she's still trying to figure out exactly what it means to be a deity. Now please note that a part of what happens next has been retconned, as it proved problematic for Magic the Gathering continuity, but enjoy the ride anyway. As part of her research, she summons other figures, one for each of Magic's colors, who are considered to be godlike: Multani, Fears, Ixidor/Llewellyn, Teferi, and even the ghost of Yawgmoth himself. While none of their advice proves helpful, she decides to embrace her deified destiny and build her own army of followers to destroy the few who oppose her. Getting back to Kamal and Llewellyn, they reach the city of Afeto and meet with Kubur. Almost immediately after their arrival, however, worshippers of Karona turn against the city. Right before Afeto is wiped off the map, Kamal and the two Newmen escape through a portal that brings them to Sanctum, now simply known as Averu. There, it's revealed that the entire city itself is their brother, the final of the three Newmen. They are the three sons of Karona, the mother of magic, and whose power had forced them into their generations-long slumber. It is because of the simultaneous death of their mothers, Phage for Kubur, Zagorka for Averu, and Akroma for Llewellyn, that Karona was given new life. With assistance from Kamal, the three Newmen set up a trap that succeeds in luring and capturing the godlike avatar. Immediately after her capture, however, it comes to light that the three brothers just want Karona's power for their own. Realizing that Otaria would just be exchanging one tyrannical ruler for three, Kamal decides to believe that Karona should have the ability to planeswalk. As a surprise to everyone in attendance, she does just that. She planeswalks away, leaving the three Newmen powerless and resigned to death, having failed to capture her magical essence. With her departure, however, she also took all magic with her from Dominaria. All magic except for what power resides within the Mirari. Now, a note again that some of what's about to occur has also been retconned for continuity purposes, but let's just go with it. Unleashed into the multiverse, Karona hops from plane to plane, her prophet's sash and waistcoat in tow. They visit a goblin-ruled Mercadia, a restored Sarah's realm, and even meets a surprisingly revived Sarah despite her having permanently perished in the canon Homelands comic book series. Phyrexia, also post-destruction apparently, and eventually land on a plane known as Argentum. There they meet a metallic man named Lord Macht. He tells Karona that he watches over the world while he waits for his master, the plane's creator, to return. He also reveals the true nature of the Mirari. It's a probe created by his master that was sent to Dominaria as a way to keep an eye on and learn more about the plane, but that it was made too powerful and eager to assimilate that the device's allure became destructive. Karona, however, sees through Lord Macht's storytelling and realizes that he himself is the creator, and that he feels tremendous guilt about unleashing the Mirari onto Dominaria. She insists that their status as gods makes them special. It's not his fault if the humans and other common species of the plane misuse the artifact. He invites her to stay with him on Argentum, but she refuses as her desire to return to Nabanaria is just too great. She is shown by Lord Mocked how to get back to her home plane, and she returns post-haste. Appearing back at Erosia, she and her enormous army of followers begins a conquest of Otaria and eventually reach the living city of Averu. The three Numen, along with Kamal, Stonebrow, and Averu's guards, put up a desperate fight. However, they prove no match for the goddess's power. She quickly overcomes them all, killing nearly everyone save for the Mirari sword-wielding druid and his centaur friend. She manages to disarm him, and just as she's about to lay the finishing blow on Kamal, her prophets, Sash and Waistcoat, assume control of the blade and run the goddess through with it, just as Lord Mocked had instructed them to do while they were all on Argentum. Lord Mocked arrives immediately thereafter, and takes the corpse as well as the Mirari away with him to Argentum, leaving Otaria's survivors to figure out things on their own. Kamal bids a final farewell to his sister, then reunites with Stonebrow, Sash, and Waistcoat to begin anew. Back on his metal plane, Lord Mocked lays the deceased Karona down to rest as she reverts back to being just Jessica, Kamal's sister, the evilness of Phage and the magic of the Numen drained from her body by the Mirari sword's fatal blow. When she awakens, Lord Mocked reveals himself to be none other than Karn, Urza's silver golem, who had become a planeswalker slightly more than a century ago in the blast from the Weatherlight that killed Yawgmoth at the end of the Phyrexian War. Karn levels with Jessica. He reveals to her that the entire reason she was never affected by the Mirari like so many others had been, why the Cabal Patriarch's touch turned her into Phage rather than killing her as it should have, and why she still survives yet today is because she, like him, is a planeswalker. Before setting off to explore the multiverse along with his new apprentice Jessica, he repurposes the Mirari by reshaping it into a sentient being that would act as Argentum's protector while he was away. He names this new creation Memnarch and releases it onto the plane. The two planeswalkers then set off for destinations unknown. As for what happens next in Argentum, well, that's a story for another day. For now, let's just take a look at the story behind the magic set that is Scourge.
Let's do it. You the duck.
Despite the Karona heavy storyline, Scourge's set expansion symbol is that of a dragon skull. It's meant to reflect the set's dragon tribal theme, despite there not really being anything in the way of dragons story-wise. And like with its predecessors, Onslaught and Legions, it does indeed continue the block's focus on tribal themes. And dragons, which have had a couple of cards here and there in the block's previous two sets, get a higher than usual amount of creature, auxiliary, and support cards this time around. For the non-dragon tribes, Scourge provided some additional support in the form of war chiefs, with one each for soldiers, illusions, zombies, goblins, and beasts. These cards all reduce the casting cost of a shared creature type by 1 generic mana. They each also had an additional ability for that shared creature type, such as Krosan Warchief allowing its controller to regenerate a target beast, and Dara Warchief providing all soldiers in play with a +1/+2 buff. In addition to having a tribal theme, Scourge also has a, quote, size matters sub-theme.
Size doesn't matter.
Oh, it matters.
In this case, that would be the size of a card's converted mana cost, as the set has many cards that care about such a thing, like Reward the Faithful, Dispersal Shield, Rush of Knowledge, Cabal Conditioning, Torrent of Fire, and Accelerated Mutation. In part to assist with the size matter sub-theme, Scourge has a cycle of cards known as Decrees, costing anywhere from 4 to 10 mana apiece. These are expensive, game-changing cards that all feature Karona in their respective artworks. In addition to having a primary mode, such as the enchantment Decree of Silence automatically countering spells an opponent casts, they also have a cycling ability that provides its owners not only with card draw, but also a second replacement ability. In keeping with the Decree of Silence example, the card turns into an uncounterable counterspell instead. In addition to continuing the block's main mechanic, Morph, it also introduced a new type of cycling called land cycling that allowed the card's owner to tutor for a specific type of basic land and put it into their hand rather than simply drawing off the top of their deck as they would with traditional cycling. And then there's Storm.
Ah boy, here we go.
Storm, which was designed by Brian Tinsman, is a triggered ability on instant and sorcery cards that triggers when the spell is cast. It lets the controller of a Storm spell put copies of that spell on a stack, with new targets if so desired. Thanks to a number of cards, such as Brain Freeze, Mind's Desire, and Tendrils of Agony for example, turning out to be rather powerful when copied through their Storm ability, the Storm mechanic formed the essence of a deck archetype that noticeably dominated competitive Magic.
It was good.
In fact, the mechanic was considered to be so broken and degenerate that head Magic designer Mark Rosewater designed an entire scale of likelihood that a mechanic would return in a standard legal set.
Well, it's called the Storm scale because Storm is a 10. Storm was, of all the mechanics we ever made, it might be the most broken. And it turns out that Storm is so powerful that anything we've made that had Storm on it, that unto itself would allow you to win the game, that's all it needs. That it might be like, oh, 1 damage to a creature, or to a player, 1 damage, and then, nope, high enough Storm, you can kill players.
Those aforementioned Storm cards aren't the only cards in Scourge worth mentioning, however, as the set had a good number of good cards despite its small size. The ability-only counterspell Stifle made its debut in the set, as did Carrion Feeder, used in Hulk Flash and Kiki-Jiki decks, the Astro Slide deck staple Decree of Justice, Dragon Breath, a key card in Cephalid Breakfast decks, Eternal Dragon, Goblin Warchief, Dragonstorm, which did not actually become strong in Standard until its Time Spiral reprint, the preemptively banned in Vintage Mind Desire, the popular Legacy burn card Pyrostatic Pillar, Siege Gang Commander, Sliver Overlord, the Legacy/Vintage staple Xantic Swarm, in the first ever MagicTheGathering.com You Make the Card contest card, Forgotten Ancient.
One of the things when we started the website is we wanted to have it be as interactive as possible, that we wanted the people reading it to feel like they were participating directly in Magic. And so I came up with the idea of You Make the Card. And so I had it run by R&D and I got permission and I said that I would, oversee it and make sure that everything, worked and that it was doing what it needed to do so that it would work in the set. They chose which artist was going to illustrate it and they chose the sketch the artist was going to use. And they chose how big it was going to be and what the ability was going to be. And the abilities were all sent in by people. And the flavor text and the name, every single thing was sent in. I know development played it and then we got some notes and we made 1 or 2 small changes. And we let the audience vote on what the changes were.
There were also 2 other cards of note in Scourge that didn't really see much play anywhere other than the kitchen table. The first of which is Bladewing the Risen, which is a storyline progress version of the Onslaught card Rorik's Bladewing, who had fought and died in the Fighting Pit tournaments at the Grand Colosseum only to be revived by the Cabal. The other is Soul Collector, the set's pre-release card, in a far better version of a similar card from years prior, Ice Age's Krovokan Vampire. So where does Magic the Gathering go from here? Well, it'll take a new card frame and, technically, a new plane to continue the Magic story. But we'll get to that in a different video.
I can't wait.
Is Scourge one of your favorite Magic the Gathering sets? If so, let us know in the comments section below. And please subscribe to Magic Untapped and toss a buck in our tip jar on Patreon for more Magic the Gathering content.